I have an update. You want to hear it?
What's that?
Julio César Chávez Jr. He's going to disown his fucking son after losing to a 40-plus-year-old man from MMA who's never professionally boxed.
Like, hold on.
Well, I thought Anderson had some boxing matches.
He only had one boxing. He had one boxing fight. He was 1-0 going into this.
I mean, well, we all know what Anderson Silva has been doing,
right,
for years, and we all know Anderson Silva. Yes, you can argue he's the greatest middleweight ever in MMA, but he was going to boxing at a very old age, and he was boxing. Yes, Julio César Chávez Jr. is a bomb. We understand that.
I was about to say, it wasn't like he was just like...
But he also boxed Canelo, and he boxed Daniel Jacobs. So we were like, okay, he's been in
losses.
No, and he's lost. He's lost. He was a guy to get brought in to do the lights, right? Towards those fighters. But it's like, look, he's been in there with some elite competition. So he should, like, yes, Anderson's known for his striking, but he should be able to, like, let Anderson know, like, hey, man, I've been in here with the best boxers and you're old as fuck. But Anderson, he's like, look, man, you ain't shit to me. And he ended up beating him. And you notice how the boxer community is quiet. I caught the highlights of the fight, so I'm not able to give it a real breakdown like you and Spence could, but I noticed the community is quiet. The community is actually giving Anderson Silva love. They're like, fuck Julio César Chávez Jr.
If you heard the broadcast last night, they were like, wow, we were just surprised he went in there and put it on him like that. They were like, we might give him 2 rounds. And that's the way I was. They said they gave him 2. I might give him 2 because he was in there beating his ass.
Yeah. Nah, that's a fact. Like, Anderson Silva, the whole fight was just, he was on him. Like,
he was on him.
he was on him. It was very reminiscent of like Anderson Silva that we would see in the ring, like when he fought Forrest Griffin, and it looked like he can keep his hands at his waist and not be hit. It was very interesting to see how, not just with those same skills, with that skill set, but at such an old age, to be able to like control a fight. And it also shows you how to me, I feel like it kind of shows you like similar to Clarissa Shields. Like, when you take someone that is the elite from their own sport and you put them in a space where they train, they do all the elite stuff, but they're just doing the elite stuff in that mindset in a different training, you can get a victory when you're not fighting someone that's at that same elite level. So it kind of goes to show you like, there's a space for some of these fighters. I'm surprised someone that's like 46 is winning. Like, only person that should be winning in boxing that's 46 years old and he can't do that anymore is Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins is probably like the only fighter that's boxing that was once a boxer that was in his late 40s winning fights until he got put through the ropes and fell like into the crowd.
That shit was crazy.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
Yeah, it was very sad.
Oh my God, man. That shit was wild, man.
But crazy. I think what's going to happen now is the dream match, right? Anderson Silva versus Roy Jones Jr.
Yep.
And I think that fight I think that's going to be a fun fight to watch, because now you're kind of like, well, Anderson he beat a boxer and he beat him handily. And then now it's Roy Jones versus Anderson. Now, I'm not saying that Anderson is going to beat Roy Jones or even vice versa. I'm just saying that fight should be entertaining, because now we're like, Anderson can actually box. We already know Roy Jones, Hall of Famer. So that's gonna be interesting, because back in the day when Anderson was in his prime, there was talks of Anderson crossing over to do a boxing match with Roy Jones.
Right.
So now that it's looking like this, it could be more of a reality. Why not? Fuck it. It's a fun fight. This is not gonna do any more damage to boxing than what the damage has already been done with all the fucking fake foo ass fights that's been happening. So why not? It's more credible than the upcoming circus fights coming up. So
nah, man, I'm gonna just say this: Anderson Silva's gonna win. He's gonna beat Roy Jones Jr. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I think he's gonna beat Roy Jones Jr. because someone like Roy Jones, it's not a fight for me because Roy Jones Jr. is a fighter who I think he would have a difficult time with Chavez Jr. right now because Roy Jones Jr. has fought some bums. Now, granted, Roy Jones Jr. could box my head off any day of the week. He's a professional athlete, but he's actually had fights where he's gotten knocked out by guys that have probably less talent than Chavez. So
I want to say something real quick about that too. Like listeners, like I think it's pretty obvious that we are not professionally trained fighters. You know what I mean? We give our opinions on these sports and like that is a thing. But it's
you said something otherwise the other day.
Yeah. Listeners, we give our opinions on here and we like to entertain y'all. We're here for y'all.
And I'll put it like this. I'm rooting for Anderson Silva. He's the MMA guy. I'm always going to root for MMA when it comes to these MMA versus boxing guys. Whether these MMA guys are looking to get their ass whipped or they might actually have a chance. I'm always going for the MMA guy. I think MMA is the more
superior sport.
Yes. So
it is, in my opinion.
Now, I like boxing. I think boxers, there's some good, definitely boxers I'm a fan of, But overall, the sport is being looked at as a sham. There's not people that's celebrating it. And when it's catching headlines, it's YouTubers, you know what I mean? Or TikTokers or whatever the fuck. It's not the elite matchups that's supposed to be happening. I still don't hear people talk about fucking Errol Spence and Pacquiao. I still don't hear people talking about that. You know what I mean? I'm like, what a fucking shame.